Here I am back after a summer pause. There was some holiday, some work, and also surgery on my knee. But now I'm getting better and I'm back here for you, talking about martial arts or topics related. Today is actually not exactly a martial art episode, it's a story episode. We're talking about a story like you probably already know, you read the title when you start listening, and it's the story of Mulan. I thought it was a good time because you know about the movie coming out on Disney Plus if you have it, and of course it's a story already told, already from Disney, but it's also a folkloristic story in China, as also many other people did it. The story of Mulan comes from a poem written in northern China in the 6th century. It is probably not a true story, but it has told over and over again for 14 centuries because it reflects a courage and a devotion to family that inspires people no matter their time or place. Filmmakers in China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the United States have all made movies about this remarkable young woman. Let's listen to the Ballad of Mulan. Mulan was 15 years old. She lived in a China that expected her to marry, to raise a family, and to care for her parents in their old age. It most certainly did not expect her to become a soldier and march off to war. In fact, waging war would have been the last things Mulan herself expected to do with her life, until the day the soldiers arrived. It was a quiet afternoon, and Mulan was waving in the front room when the soldiers arrived with draft posters. Quietly, she left her work to look out the door and watch them trot into the yard atop their powerful horses. Her father stepped out into the courtyard to meet them. One of the soldiers handed him a rolled-up scroll, a draft poster. "Your family," the leader announced, "will be required to provide one man for the Khan's army. The fight against the invader in the north has grown much worse. We must have soldiers to repel them, or our homes will be overrun." "I understand," her father said, "yet I have only 3 children, 2 girls who are 17 and 15, and a son who is 6 years old. I will consider it an honor to serve the Khan myself, but I am no longer young, and my health is failing. I doubt I could serve well." "That is not my concern," the soldier said, "and it shouldn't be yours either. Your duty is not to question the Khan's orders. Your duty is simply to obey. Within 3 days, you must send a member of your family to the army camp near the Yellow River. When he has left, tack this poster to your front gate. It will tell us that you have done your duty." "Of course," Mulan's father said, "it will be an honor to serve." The soldiers wheeled their horses around and headed down the road to the next house. Mulan's father turned slowly, clenching the poster in his hand. From her hiding place just inside the front door, Mulan could see his face. It was the color of an ashes. All that night Mulan tossed and turned, sleeping fitfully, seeing her father's ashes face in her dreams. When she awoke the next morning, she knew what she had to do. Her father was not well enough to join the army. He would not last even a month of riding hard, sleeping on the ground, eating the poor ration of soldier. If she wanted to save her father's life, she would have to go to war herself. So that morning Mulan got up and put on her best clothes. Her mother, sister, and brother were outside feeding the animals. Her father was sitting on the front steps, staring into space. Quietly, she lifted the floorboard under which father kept his money. She pulled out the small sack and counted out a few coins. Gathering up some of her waving, she told mother she was going to go to the market to sell it. Mulan went to the East Market and sold the weaving. A man there was selling a horse, a beautiful, spirited chestnut mare. She was the perfect horse, but Mulan knew if she went to purchase her, the man would wonder why a young girl was buying a horse. Mulan wandered the market until she found one of the draft-age boys who had come up from the camp. She hired him to purchase the horse for her. The boy was suspicious too, but he didn't turn down the pocket money she offered for his service. Mulan led the horse to the West Market, where she bought a saddle, then to the South Market to buy a bridle, and the North Market to buy a whip. She didn't want anyone to suspect that she was outfitting herself for military duty. A few clerks raised eyebrows at Mulan's purchase. She told them she was buying equipment for her father. In a sense, it was true. What she did for him. Satisfied that she had everything she needed, Mulan returned home. She tied the horse in the wood. She hid the saddle and the bridle under the house. Then she snuck into her father's closet and took a change of clothes, and hid it under her blankets. She will be ready to go in the morning. That evening was unlike any Mulan had ever expected in her life. For the first time, she looked and really saw her family. Her mother was cooking supper. Her sister was playing with her brother in the corner. Her father sat quietly, sharpening his sword, a look of deep sadness on his face. Mulan tried to etch their faces into her memory, to remember always what they looked like on that evening. More than anything, she wanted to gather them all into her arms and tell them how much she would miss them, but they could not know, not yet. The next morning, Mulan rose early, long before even the first glimmer of light appeared on the horizon. She put on her father's clothes, shifting within them, trying to make them feel natural. No matter how she adjusted them, they still felt strange. She took her father's sword from its place and lashed the scabbard to her belt. Then she took the draft poster from the shelf. As she went out the front gate, she tucked it into the gate's post. The poster and the missing sword would be enough to tell her parents what she had done. A lump rose in her throat as she gathered her saddle and bridle. With a great act of will, she turned her head and left behind the only home she had ever known. The army camp by the Yellow River was already humming with activity when Mulan got there. The soldiers were a disorganized, ragged lot. Some of the older men had fought invaders the last time they had swarmed through the land. They were taking the younger soldiers aside and giving them advice about what to bring and what to leave behind. Some of the younger men wandered about, their faces sometimes beaming with bravado, sometimes clouded with dread. The youngest men among them were little more than a boy, 13, 14, or 15 years old. Mulan was relieved to see that she was by no means the smallest one there. That afternoon she met her commander. That evening she slept on the ground, lulled to sleep by the sound of the river and the dull drone of hundreds of soldiers snoring in the cool air. She awoke several times during the night, each time straining her ear to hear the sound of her parents' voice. She was sure they would try to find her, to bring her home. But when the dawn broke and the army saddled up to ride, Mulan scanned the crowd and saw only her fellow soldiers, their families clinging to them, begging them to do their duty and then come home. For 10 years Mulan rode with the army. For 10 years and 10,000 miles. She saw terrors she knew she would never be able to tell her family, even if wanted to remember such fearful thing which she didn't. She saw friends die of disease, of wounds, of the cold and meager mountain air. Summer and winter she slept on the hard ground, lulled to sleep by the whinings of Mount Yan, wild horses. Some mornings, far too many mornings, she awoke to the blood-freezing war cries of a barbarian army. She outlived 3 generals, and while marching through mountains passes, laden with the armor of a man, she became a woman. After 10 years, the war was over. Those who survived were brought to the splendid hall. The Khan himself handed out promotion and awards. One of Mulan's friends was made a commander, another was given a medal and made a secretary to a high official. When Mulan's turn came, she stepped before the Khan and bowed. The Khan hung a medal around her neck and handed her a scroll listing her acts of heroism and expressing the nation's gratitude. "I wish to make you one of my ministers," he said. "Would that please you?" "Thank you, sir," Mulan said, "but what will please me most is to return to my family. I have been gone far too long." "I understand," the Khan said. "Go to them with my blessing." Mulan met her friends outside the hall. "Come to my home this evening," she said. "We will feast and celebrate your new position and my return to my family." It was a short walk to Mulan's home. The way was familiar, but like something out of a dream. As she approached her family's front gate, her knees began to shake. Her stomach tried to flap its way out of her body. Her breath floated in and out of her chest, in fits and starts. Would her family recognize her after all those years? Certainly they would. Would they honor her for what she did, or would they turn their back on her and her deceptions, forcing her into the street to fend for herself? Mulan straightened the Khan's medal on her chest, clutched the Emperor's scroll in her hand, and pushed open the gate. In the open door of the front room, Mulan's mother sat, waving. She looked up. Mulan's heart sank when she saw the lines that years of worry had left on her face. Her mother's hair was beginning to gray. She looked older, 10 years older, maybe even 20. As she looked up from her weaving, she saw Mulan, uniform, and went pale. She cast a quick glance at the young man who had come around from the side of the house to see who had arrived. Mulan recognized his eyes. The young man was her brother, of course. Mulan's mother would be worried that the soldier standing in the courtyard was there to drift him. Mulan tucked the scroll inside her sleeve. "Mother," she said. It was all she could say before a lump rose in her throat. "Mulan?" Mulan nodded and went to her. She put her arms around her and felt her cheek against her own. "Mulan," her mother said again. Mulan's brother left and returned with their sister and father. Mulan handed the scroll to her father, then removed the medal from around her neck and hung it around his. Tears welled up in his eyes. She went to her old room and took off her armor and her soldier's clothing. She washed the trial dust from her body and hair. Then she dabbed on some of her sister's perfume and powdered her face with flower powder. She took her old clothes from where they had been hanging in the corner, put them on, and fixed her hair. It had been a long time, 10 long years of sleeping in armor and attending to her clothing only when battles and marches allowed. Mulan looked in the mirror. The woman who looked back pleased her. Mulan's companions came that evening. She met them by torchlighting at the gate. At first they looked right past her, scanning the courtyard for a young soldier in armor. But when Mulan spoke, their eyes widened. This woman in silks and perfume was the soldier they had fought beside for 10 years. They stood rooted to the path, staring despite themselves. "Come in, my friends," Mulan said. "Let's eat and drink and toast our new lives." End of the ballad. So it's very, very simple. There is no, generally, there are no songs, of course. I mean, the deceiving part is all like a novelization, but it's quite interesting. A simple story, probably not a real story, as we said before, but of course it's very show the pride, the honor, also the power and the strength of a girl. She was 15 years old when she went to the war, and this is to teach not only girls but everybody that maybe sometimes we don't think we can do something, but we can if the motivation is right. Okay, if there's something that really pushes us to do these things. In the Mulan's case was the honor of the father, or the life of the father, because the father would go in war for the honor of the family, but of course he would have died soon after. So the love for her father pushed her to take his place, even if nobody expected her to do that, and nobody would have blamed her if she would haven't done. And for sure she wasn't thinking that she was able to fight. She never fought before. But when the motivation is right, we can do many things. Of course, some people say that you can do everything you want, nothing can stop you, the willpower is what you need, but you have to put it in context. Okay, I have surgery on both my knees, so I have some limitation on my movement, on my growth. I can't go fight on a pro fight because I probably have weak knees, and I will be not strong as the other guys, or I can't become famous classic ballerina dance, because I'm older, and even if I start to train ballet now, I probably can never reach professional levels. Okay, so even if my hard will, even if I really wanted and I have a good motivation, we need to be also real. Okay, we can do a lot of things, we can do great things, but I can't become an astronaut. Okay, just have the right goal in mind, and something will happen. Okay, so maybe you don't have a job. Instead to just complain government or the situation, just gather everything you have and try to do your best. That's just something that came up on my mind, and that's it. I hope you enjoyed this story, and if you like it, you can share it to your friends, and you can write me if you want other type of story like this. We have many legends in the martial arts topics. And also, I want to remind you about my Patreon, so that if you want to listen to every week's episode in English, you can join the Patreon, and you have it not only every week in English, but also earlier than the normal people. Also, when you're there, any tire you get the podcast, but also you get the training. So it's not just for the podcast, you get the training, and the bonus is the podcast and other things. All right, guys, I hope you have a good week, and remember to always train and train good.